Marriages are built on trust, or at least that's what I always believed. For over a decade, my wife and I seemed to embody the ideal family. 2 children, a beautiful home, and a bond that I thought was unshakable. But as it turns out, cracks can form in even the strongest looking facades. And sometimes those cracks grow so slowly that you don't even notice them until it's too late. It began innocently enough. My wife had always been social, the life of every gathering. Her charm and energy were part of why I fell in love with her. Recently, however, something had changed. She'd grown distant, her phone constantly in hand, her laughter reserved for messages I wasn't privy to. At first, I dismissed that she'd always had a vibrant personality, and I wasn't the type to pry. But when her late-night workouts at the gym became more frequent, I couldn't help but notice how little they seemed to affect her fitness routine. Then came the forgotten anniversaries, the hastily planned excuses, and the vague explanations about where she'd been. I wanted to trust her. I told myself I was overthinking, that life just had a way of pulling people in different directions sometimes. Still, a nagging voice in the back of my mind wouldn't let it go. One evening, after she left for another gym session, I confided in my sister. Maybe she's just stressed, I reasoned aloud. My sister, however, wasn't as quick to dismiss my concerns. You need to keep your eyes open, she said firmly. If nothing's wrong, great. But if there is, don't let it catch you off guard. That conversation planted a seed of doubt that began to grow. The turning point came when my wife announced a weekend girls trip. She had never done anything like that before. And though I wanted to support her, something about the way she avoided my eyes when she mentioned it felt wrong. As soon as she left, I called my sister again. She showed up the same afternoon with her husband, and together, we brainstormed a plan. It felt invasive, borderline wrong, but my sister was adamant. You need to know the truth, whatever it is. That's how I found myself installing discreet surveillance cameras around the house and placing a GPS tracker in my wife's car. Every step of the process felt like a betrayal of the trust I'd promised her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something far worse had already shattered that trust. The cameras went unnoticed. In fact, she barely seemed to register my presence at all anymore. The tracker, too, was easy to install. When she came back from her trip, she was all smiles, acting as if nothing was out of the ordinary. If anything, her cheerfulness only deepened my suspicions. The first week passed uneventfully, and I began to doubt myself. Maybe I really was being paranoid. But then it happened. One Friday night, when she said she was heading out for an evening jog, I noticed her tracker showing a location far from the neighborhood park. Instead, her car was parked near a trendy restaurant about 30 kilometers away. I logged into the camera feed just in case, but there was nothing unusual about her. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I decided to wait and watch, hoping to catch more conclusive evidence before jumping to conclusions. That weekend, while she spent an unusual amount of time I reviewed the footage from the past few days. Most of it showed nothing out of the ordinary, just her moving through the house, taking care of the kids, watching TV. And late Sunday night, I saw something that made my stomach churn. While I was asleep, she crept into the living room help with the kids," my sister offered. "But you need to focus on gathering as much evidence as possible. If this goes to court, you'll need it." Reluctantly, I agreed. Over the next few days, I dug deeper into my wife's activities. I checked credit card statements, reviewed phone records, and combed through weeks of surveillance footage. What I found was a chilling confirmation of my fears. Her credit card showed frequent charges at restaurants and boutique stores, places she never mentioned visiting. Her phone records revealed dozens of calls to an unfamiliar number, many of them late at night. The surveillance footage, while not damning on its own, showed her leaving the house in a hurry, often checking her phone with a nervous energy. The final blow came one quiet Saturday afternoon. My wife had taken the kids to the park, giving me a rare moment of solitude. I used the time to sift through her email account, which I had access to from an old shared device. What I found was a series of emails that left me shaking. They were messages between her and a man named Josh, the same man I'd seen her with in the cafe. The emails ranged from flirtatious exchanges to more explicit discussions of their plans to finally be together. One message in particular sent a chill down my spine. "I can't keep living this double life. Once the baby is here, we'll figure it out." The baby. She was pregnant. When my wife returned home that evening, I could barely look at her. Every word she spoke felt like a dagger, her cheerful tone a mockery of the pain she caused. I wanted to confront her right then and there, to demand answers, but I held back. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about our kids, our home, and the life we built together. Instead, I retreated to the bedroom and locked the door, leaving her to wonder about my sudden mood shift. As I stared at the ceiling, the weight of everything I discovered pressed down on me. My wife wasn't just unfaithful, she was living an entirely separate life, one that didn't include me or the family we created. The next morning I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her with words. I was going to let the evidence speak for itself. With my sister's help, I compiled everything I'd found. GPS data, credit card statements, emails, and surveillance footage. By the end of the day, I had a complete dossier of her lies and betrayals. I also contacted a lawyer. Gathering evidence is the right move, the lawyer said after hearing my story. If this goes to court, you'll have a strong case. But be prepared, things could get messy. Messy was an understatement. The storm was brewing, and I could feel it in every fiber of my being. But this time, I wasn't going to sit idly by. My wife had made her choices, and now it was time for the truth to come to light. The days leading up to the confrontation were a blur of quiet determination. My routine with the kids remained unchanged: breakfast, school drop-offs, bedtime stories. But inside, I was a storm waiting to break. My wife, oblivious to what was brewing, continued her pattern of deceit. She still left the house early, returned late, and avoided any meaningful conversations with me. On the morning of the confrontation, my sister came over with her husband. Their presence gave me the courage I needed. The plan was simple: lay the evidence on the table and let her face the truth. That evening, as the kids slept soundly in their rooms, I waited for her to come home. My sister and her husband stayed in the living room, ready to intervene if things got heated. When my wife walked through the door, she seemed surprised to see everyone gathered. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Sit down," I said, my tone colder than I intended. "We need to talk." She hesitated for a moment, then sat on the couch, glancing nervously between me and my sister. I began with the GPS data. "Your car has been parked near the Royal Inn more times than I can count. Care to explain?" Her face paled, but she quickly composed herself. "That's ridiculous. I've never been there." I pulled out printed maps showing the exact locations and timestamps. "This says otherwise." She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't give her the chance. Next, I showed her the credit card statements. "You've been spending hundreds of dollars at restaurants and stores you've never mentioned. Who were you with?" Her eyes darted to my sister, then back to me. I was shopping for the kids," she stammered. "For the kids?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "At an upscale restaurant? During lunch hours?" Finally, I pulled out the emails. "Do you know who Josh is?" Her breath hitched, and for a moment, I thought she might faint. She didn't answer, so so I read aloud one of the messages. I can't wait to start our life together. Once the baby is here, everything will change. The silence was deafening. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open, but no words came out. "You're pregnant," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And it's not mine, is it?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and she shook her head. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I interrupted. "You've been lying to me, to our kids, to everyone. And now you expect me to believe you?" "This stops here." She broke down, sobbing into her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I replied, my voice firm. "You've betrayed me and destroyed our family. You made your choices, and now you'll face the consequences." She begged for forgiveness, claiming that she'd end the affair and work to rebuild our marriage. But her words felt hollow, like a script she'd rehearsed. I wasn't interested in her apologies anymore. I wanted action, accountability, and, most importantly, a future for my kids and me. I handed her a folder containing the evidence I'd collected. "I've spoken to a lawyer," I said. "We're getting a divorce. I'm filing for full custody of the kids, and you won't get a cent more than you deserve." Her expression shifted from sorrow to anger. "You can't do this to me," she hissed. "You did this to yourself," I replied, standing up. "Now leave. We're done here." After she left the house, I sat in silence, processing what had just happened. My sister and her husband stayed late, offering their support and reassuring me that I'd done the right thing. But despite their kind words, the weight of the evening hung heavy in the air. The confrontation had been brutal, but it was only the beginning. There were legal battles ahead, emotional scars to heal, and a new life to build. Yet for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. This was the first step toward reclaiming my life and my dignity.